Alright, today I am changing the accessory drive belts on my 1999 Honda Civic EX, and hopefully this video will help you out. I'm changing all three belts. On the front of the engine you have a AC belt, a power steering belt, and an alternator belt. 3 different serpentine belts. Alright, so here is the old belts, and the worst one was the AC belt. It was making noise when I turn on the AC. Hard to see here, but this thing is completely chewed up everywhere, and they were pretty old. Who knows? I don't know how old they are. This is the power steering. If you look at it, you can actually see the outer layer is rubbed off. So it's just a matter of time, and this was the best condition one. This was the alternator. Looks like it had been replaced at some point, but as you can see, it also was in serious need of repair. Alright, so here's your, went to AutoZone to get the belts. These are the part numbers for the belts you need. This one right here is to replace the alternator belt, and I don't have these in the exact order that they were in. Let's see here. I can tell you though. Yeah, the 820 here, this is for the AC. This one's for the power steering. Also, I'll cover this here in a second, but when I was taking things apart, this is the lower driver's side engine mount that has to come off. As you can see, mine has definitely seen better days, so that had to be replaced. So here is that part number from AutoZone also. There's about, with tax, about $75 worth of parts here, including the mount. So not too bad. Here's the new mount. As you can see, that doesn't even really move versus the old one. Yeah. Alright, so to do this, you're going to want to jack the car up, put it on a jack stand. I've done that here. Move the grab all the way, put it on a jack stand, turn the wheel all the way to the left, and under here there are a couple of plastic pins. You just spin them out to the left, and that lets this piece come down, and I folded it underneath there. Sticking out here is your lower engine mount. There's just a nut that comes off of it. Before you start messing with your engine mounts though, you're going to want to jack up the oil pan like this to support the engine. So put a piece of wood under it and put it up under the oil pan. In this case, especially with the EX, it has an aluminum pan, so it's plenty strong to hold the weight when I start undoing the motor mounts. Then I came up above, and it just makes this job a lot easier if you take off the motor mounts. So on the top, there's 2 nuts, and then a nut right here. And to get to this nut, you have to take out the 2 10mm bolts, if you have cruise control, that hold on the servo here. That way you can just rotate it back out of the way to reveal the nut. Also, you're going to want to loosen this wiring harness that runs from the alternator. And these little clips just pull off. That gives you room to get down and loosen up the alternator. Alright, how you do this is there are some, I believe they're 12mm. There's 1 bolt here, and then on the back of the power steering pump down here, this is the slide adjustment. Go ahead and take both of those out completely. They look like this, and then you can move the power steering pump and rotate it out of the way, and also slip the belt off. Once you get the power steering pump belt off, you can reach down here, and as you can see, this is the tensioner for the AC belt. sticking out from it is a 14 millimeter bolt. You want to first loosen the 14 millimeter bolt, and that can be quite difficult to remove. Definitely splay it down with PB Blast or something first. And then you'll probably need a wrench and a pipe with some leverage. That way you can break that loose. Loosen it up. Don't take it all the way out, but loosen it up enough. And then on the top there is a 10 millimeter bolt. If you loosen that bolt, it takes the tension, lets the pulley go down, and lets you get the belt off the AC compressor, which is down below. So the order you want to take it off is first the power steering pump, then the AC compressor, and then we'll move over to the alternator. On the alternator, it's hard to see down here, but there is a bolt up top that is the adjustment for the tension. And then down below, let's see, there's a bolt down at the bottom of the alternator there. Don't take it out, just loosen it. That will allow the alternator to rotate so the belt can slip off. You do have to take also the lower engine mount out to get the AC belt off, because it does go around that and there's no way to get it off. How you take that mount off, come down here. Remember, make sure you have the engine supported. And this is the mount on the bottom. There are two bolts that hold it to the frame, and then this right here slides over this, and there's a washer and a nut, so it's bolted on. So first undo the washer and the nut, take out these two bolts, and slide it off. That will allow you to get the belt out from around that. Versus the install, I've went ahead and already got my first belt in place, which is the alternator belt, which you need to put on first. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that belt down, and then I will put on the AC belt. Alright, to tighten this down, I'm going to use a pry bar, put it down between the engine and the alternator, and then you pull, which will tighten the alternator. And while you're doing that, you go ahead and tighten down the top 12 millimeter bolt. It's kind of like an old-fashioned, like in the older cars with the V-belts. That's how we're doing it on this one. Alright, so we've got the lower bolt tightened on our alternator. Our belt is nice and tight. It does help to have an assistant hold the crowbar for you while you tighten the 12 millimeter bolt on the top. You can come down and then tighten the 14 millimeter nut down here. So that's the first belt. It is in place, and we're ready to move on to the AC belt. So what we're going to do is we're going to slip it down over the crank pulley, the AC compressor, and then we'll pry it up over the top of the tensioner here. And this tensioner pushes down out of the way. And then after we get it on, we'll go ahead and tighten down this bolt here until the belt is nice and tight, and then we'll snug up the 14 millimeter bolt on the front. And remember, when installing the AC belt, you do have to go around that the protrusion from the engine there for the mount. So make sure it gets slipped around there. You'll see as you're putting it in. Alright, once you get your belt slipped over, your pulleys for your AC here, like I said, stick your 10 millimeter socket on and turn it clockwise to tighten your tensioner. And what you want to do is every now and then stop and check, see how tight your belt is. You don't want it like super tight, but you want it tight. Definitely don't want there to be really any slack in it. So keep tightening this down and checking it. And like I said, once you get this tightened, then you'll lock down the 14 millimeter bolt right here. Alright, I've got everything locked down up here with the 14 millimeter bolt there. So Now it's before I put the power steering belt on, I'm gonna go ahead and put this lower motor mount on. So on the old one, in case you forget which way you put it on, there's a focus there, a little F with an arrow saying the front of the car. So we'll take the new one, position it the same way. Then what we're gonna do is we're going to slide this over there and put that into place and then bolt it up to the frame the way you took it off. Alright, so here's how this lower mount should look. You want to make sure this is centered on here, and if it's not, either raise or lower your engine until it is. You get the washer on there, and the last step's tighten down this nut to spec, and then we'll move back up to the top of the engine, get this finished up. Alright, back up here on the top side now, I'm going to go ahead and put our last belt in place. It just goes around our most outer pulley on the crank there, and then we'll put it around the power steering pump, and we'll start those bolts and get them back in place, and then do our final tightening. After that, we will put the motor mount back on and get it all finished up. Alright, we've got the top belt slid over. Start by putting this bolt in, but do not tighten it all the way down. Then put in your bottom bolt that goes this way. Then you can pry between the mount and the bottom of the power steering pump right here. And you can actually do this one by yourself if you hold this with your left hand and then tighten the bottom bolt with your right hand. And I would highly recommend for this job a set of these socket wrenches to make the job a lot easier. Alright, so the last thing I need to do is get the top motor mount in. I'll be ready to call it done. Alright, I've got the top motor mount bolts and nut put back into place. So I'm going to put these last two bolts from here in, 10mm bolts. I'll be ready to make sure everything works. Alright, so make sure you got everything clipped back where it belongs, and the last step will be to start it up and make sure that everything looks right. Alright, so after you do that, I would double check, make sure your belts feel tensioned correctly, and go ahead and lower your car off your jack stands and you are done. Hopefully this video helped you. I know I didn't show exactly every step by step, but there is some mechanical knowledge required to do this. So hopefully it helped you a little bit. Thanks, bye.